The ZY Grand Hall was a spectacle of architectural brilliance, with floating platforms, cascading streams of bioluminescent liquid, and ceilings that shimmered with holographic constellations. Thousands of alien delegates filled the chamber, their diverse forms shifting in excitement and curiosity. The Interstellar Biology Symposium was the pinnacle of scientific discourse in the galaxy, a place where species unveiled their most astonishing biological traits. For decades, humanity had been absent from this prestigious event. But this year, everything was about to change. The announcement of humanity's participation had been met with laughter in some quarters and mild curiosity in others. Most delegates considered the species primitive, notable only for their late entry into interstellar society. To the advanced galactic civilizations, humans were an enigma, their biology assumed to be as unremarkable as their technology. As the human delegation prepared to take the stage, Dr. Lena Alvarez, Earth's foremost biologist, adjusted her presentation hologram. Beside her stood Captain Neil Varga, a representative from the United Earth Defense Corps, chosen to address any questions on humanity's physical capabilities. From the Zarnathian delegation's platform, Overseer Thrakis observed the humans with a smirk. The Zarnathians, a species renowned for their regenerative abilities and quadruple-layered nervous systems, considered themselves biological paragons. What could these soft, fragile creatures possibly teach us? Thrakis muttered to his colleague, his bioluminescent tendrils rippling with derision. When Lena stepped up to the podium, the hall's ambient hum shifted into silence. She began with a calm, professional demeanor, her voice carrying the weight of both pride and curiosity. Esteemed delegates of the galaxy, thank you for inviting humanity to this extraordinary gathering. Today, I will share some insights into human biology that may surprise you. The crowd leaned in slightly, their collective intrigue piqued by the subtle confidence in her tone. Holographic displays activated behind her, showing a rotating model of a human body. Humans may not have claws, venom sacs, or armored exoskeletons, but our physiology is a tapestry of adaptations honed by millennia of survival in a hostile environment. Let's start with one of our most fascinating traits, resilience. The hologram shifted to show a human recovering from a broken bone, the intricate process of cellular regeneration mapped out in vivid detail. While we lack the instant regeneration of species like the Zarnathians, Lena continued, her eyes flicking to Thrakis, our ability to repair ourselves over weeks or months is remarkable. Our bones grow back stronger after stress-induced damage, a phenomenon we've harnessed for training and adaptation. Thrakis snorted loudly, but Lena pressed on. Consider this, our species can survive extreme dehydration, prolonged starvation, and even exposure to harmful environments for short durations, all thanks to a unique combination of metabolic flexibility and psychological tenacity. Murmurs rippled through the hall. The Craxians, a water-bound species, exchanged nervous glances at the mention of dehydration. And that's not all, Lena said, her voice sharpening. Let's talk about our immune system. Humans possess a natural adaptability that allows us to develop immunity to diseases that could wipe out entire populations of other species. This statement elicited audible gasps from several delegations. Diseases were a universal threat, and the idea of a species thriving in the face of pathogens was unsettling. Lena glanced at Neil, who stepped forward with a grim expression. Our biology isn't just about surviving environmental challenges, he said. It's also about endurance. Humans have an unmatched ability to sustain physical activity over long periods. We're persistence predators, able to outlast prey over days if necessary. Our ancestors used this trait to thrive in harsh conditions, and that capability hasn't diminished. The hologram shifted again, this time showing a human running alongside holographic representations of various alien species. The comparison was stark. Humans could keep going long after others collapsed. What kind of creature chooses to endure that level of discomfort? Thrakis scoffed, unable to restrain himself. Lena smiled coolly. The kind that doesn't know when to quit. The chamber erupted into a mixture of laughter, intrigue, and skepticism. But as Lena delved into humanity's unique adaptations, our sweat-based cooling system, high tolerance for pain, and even the placebo effect. The laughter subsided. The delegates began to see humans not as fragile beings, but as a species defined by an uncanny ability to persevere. By the time Lena reached the section on neuroplasticity, detailing how humans could adapt their minds as readily as their bodies, the hall was abuzz with conversation. She concluded with a simple but powerful statement. "We are not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most technologically advanced. But we are survivors. That is our gift, and it's one we've never taken for granted." The audience erupted into applause, though a few delegates clapped begrudgingly. Thrakis, however, remained unimpressed. "Resilience is overrated," he declared loudly. "Show me something truly extraordinary." Lena's smile widened. "Extraordinary? Let me show you an aspect of human biology that might shock you." She activated the final segment of her presentation. A hologram displayed a magnified image of human DNA, focusing on regions linked to adaptability and latent potential. "We've recently discovered dormant sequences in our genome, traits that could be triggered under extreme conditions. It's possible we've only scratched the surface of our evolutionary potential." The room fell silent again. Even Thrakis stopped smirking. Evolutionary potential was a topic of intense interest, especially to species that had plateaued in their development. "What does this mean?" asked a delegate from the insectoid churn. Lena's expression turned serious. "It means humanity's story isn't finished. What you see now is only the beginning." As the human delegation left the stage, the atmosphere in the hall had shifted dramatically. For the first time, the galaxy began to see humanity not as newcomers, but as a force of nature. And in the shadows, Overseer Thrakis' tendrils twitched nervously. "Perhaps," he muttered to himself, "there's more to these creatures than meets the eye." The aftermath of the presentation rippled through the symposium like a tidal wave. Alien delegates from dozens of species swarmed the human booth, demanding clarifications, evidence, and, in some cases, demonstrations. Dr. Lena Alvarez and Captain Neil Varga were swamped with questions, ranging from the scientific to the downright absurd. "How do you regulate internal temperature without shedding external layers of skin?" asked an Avraxian, its chitinous body clicking as it leaned closer. "Is it true you can override pain receptors with sheer willpower?" questioned a Wyrathian, its 6 eyes blinking in unison. Neil, sipping water to steady himself, offered a tight smile. "It's not quite like flipping a switch, but we've been known to push through situations where others might falter." The Zarnathian overseer, Thrakis, loomed in the background, his bioluminescent tendrils dim with skepticism. He wasn't satisfied with flashy words or elegant graphs. What was survival without strength? What use was resilience in the face of raw power? For Thrakis, humanity was still little more than a footnote in the galactic record, a species of curiosities, not capabilities. But Thrakis wasn't the only one watching. Among the crowd, a delegation of Zilon scientists observed the humans in silence. The Zilon were feared across the galaxy, their reputation forged in the fires of their military conquests and unmatched physical prowess. To them, humanity's survival stories were amusing anecdotes at best, laughable when compared to their apex physiology. The Zilon leader, General Tkor, approached Lena and Neil as the crowd thinned. Towering over them, his scaled form radiated an aura of menace. "Fascinating presentation," Tkor rumbled, his voice as deep as tectonic plates shifting. "But data and simulations mean little. Words are meaningless without action." Neil straightened, his instincts honed by years in the United Earth Defense Corps kicking in. "What exactly are you suggesting, General?" Kor's reptilian face twisted into what could only be described as a predatory grin. "A demonstration. Prove your resilience in a real-world scenario. Let us see if your biology holds up under pressure." Lena frowned. "We didn't come here for gladiatorial games, General. This is a symposium, not an arena." "On the contrary," Thrakis interjected smoothly, his bioluminescent tendrils flickering with renewed energy. "The Zulon's suggestion aligns perfectly with the scientific spirit. A controlled experiment, to validate your claims." Lena opened her mouth to protest, but Neil placed a hand on her arm. What kind of test are we talking about? Core gestured toward the symposium's environmental chambers, vast holographically controlled ecosystems used for studying interspecies adaptations. A survival trial. You humans claim to endure where others falter. Let's see how long your so-called resilience lasts in the wastes of Zarnak. The wastes of Zarnak were infamous even among the galaxy's toughest species. An artificial recreation of the harshest environments in the known universe, it combined extreme temperatures, hostile fauna, and relentless storms into a biome designed to break the unbreakable. You can't be serious, Lena said, her voice tight. That environment has killed seasoned warriors. Neil cut her off with a determined look. If this is the only way to make them take us seriously, I'll do it. The hall buzzed with anticipation as the experiment was hastily arranged. Delegates flocked to observation pods, eager to witness what many expected to be humanity's humiliation. Thrakis exchanged smug looks with Tkor, confident that this trial would expose the limits of human biology. The chamber doors opened, and Neil stepped inside. The wastes of Zarnak stretched out before him, a desolate expanse of jagged rocks, boiling pools of acidic liquid, and skies churning with toxic storms. A robotic voice announced the parameters. Objective: survive for 24 standard hours. Secondary objective: navigate to the extraction point. Neil adjusted the lightweight survival suit provided by the symposium, a standard issue design meant to offer minimal assistance. He knew better than to rely on it. Human endurance wasn't about tools, it was about grit. The first few hours tested his physical limits. The heat was suffocating, each breath like inhaling fire. Acidic rain burned through his outer suit, forcing him to use makeshift repairs with scraps of material he scavenged from the environment. The local fauna, hulking insected predators, tracked his movements relentlessly, their chittering cries echoing through the canyons. By the 6th hour, Neil's body screamed for relief. His muscles ached, his vision blurred, and the hostile terrain cut into his exposed skin. But he pressed on, drawing on the stubborn resolve that had defined humanity for millennia. Meanwhile, in the observation chamber, the delegates watched in awe. The Zarnathians whispered among themselves, impressed despite their skepticism. Even Tkor's smug expression faltered as Neil outmaneuvered a pack of predators, using his environment to trap them in a collapsing rock formation. Impressive, Tkor admitted grudgingly. But how long can he keep this up? Lena, watching from the sidelines, clenched her fists. She knew Neil's limits better than anyone, but seeing him pushed to this extreme was agonizing. Come on, Neil, she whispered. Show them what we're made of. As the hours dragged on, Neil's ingenuity became his greatest asset. He fashioned crude weapons from shards of metal and bone, created shelter from the relentless acid storms, and even managed to extract nutrients from the toxic flora. It wasn't just his biology that carried him, it was his ability to think, adapt, and endure. By the 20th hour, Neil was barely holding on. His movements were sluggish, his body battered and bruised. But his resolve remained unshaken. With sheer determination, he pushed toward the extraction point, a faint beacon on the horizon. When he finally emerged from the chamber, battered but alive, the hall erupted into stunned silence. Delegates who had mocked humanity now looked on with newfound respect. Even Thrakis and Tkor were forced to acknowledge the feat. You survived, Tkor said, his tone grudgingly respectful. Barely. Neil smirked, his voice hoarse but defiant. Barely is still surviving. The demonstration had proven humanity's resilience, but the implications ran deeper. As the galaxy's finest minds began to reassess their assumptions about human biology, one truth became undeniable: humanity was far more than they had ever imagined. The tension in the observation chamber was palpable as delegates shifted uneasily. The Zilon, Zarnathians, and others had expected humanity to fail in the unforgiving wastes of Zarnak. Instead, Neil Varga had survived, and not just survived, but thrived. Now they were faced with the grim reality: humans were far more resilient than anyone had anticipated. Yet Thrakis and Tkor were not known for yielding to adversity. In their eyes, survival was not enough. The humans had proven capable of enduring, yes, but enduring wasn't synonymous with thriving. They needed to be tested beyond mere endurance. The bar had to be raised. The atmosphere shifted again as a new challenge was proposed, a confrontation with a creature that had become synonymous with dominance, one of the deadliest apex predators from the galaxy's most feared regions. The Zulon had already offered their mightiest warriors to demonstrate the true essence of biological superiority, but now they would face something far worse. The creatures were ancient, monstrous, and had once ruled with absolute power. They were not merely apex predators in the traditional sense. They were apex predators who had claimed dominion. Tkor explained that humanity's physical biology might not outmatch these beasts, but what they needed to assess was something far more elusive, something human: fearlessness. In the wastes of Zarnak, fear had been an ever-present companion. But this new confrontation wouldn't be about mere survival. It would be about standing their ground against an opponent they couldn't physically dominate. The monstrous creatures loomed in the depths of the galaxy's darkest tales, beasts forged in the crucible of evolution, bred to conquer and annihilate. Neil, still battered but unbroken, stood before the delegation once more. The pressure was mounting, but his defiance remained unshaken. Lena stepped beside him, her eyes burning with determination. "This isn't just about surviving anymore," she said firmly. "It's about showing them that we won't be ruled by fear." The chamber doors opened once more. This time, the wastes of Zarnak had transformed into something even more sinister, a landscape saturated with shadows, the sky a swirling vortex of nightmares. The creature, massive and imposing, emerged from the depths of this darkness. It was far larger than anything Neil had faced before, its form a nightmarish fusion of muscle and scale, with jaws wide enough to swallow a moon. The Zulon warrior, observing from a distance, regarded the beast with grim satisfaction. They had named it the Abyssal Devourer, a creature said to have survived epochs of annihilation. Fear radiated from it in waves, a force as tangible as the acid storms Neil had faced before. Neil stepped forward, his fists clenched. The creature roared, a sound that echoed through the broken landscape. It was a sound of dominance, of certain death. Yet Neil stood his ground, unflinching. "It's massive," he muttered under his breath. "But size isn't everything." The Abyssal Devourer lunged, its massive claws slicing through the air. Neil ducked, rolling beneath the creature's bulk. He had faced impossible odds before, and while fear gripped his chest, so did something far more primal: determination. The creature's strikes were relentless. Neil fought back with makeshift weapons, the remnants of what had been scavenged in the wastes. Each strike, each clash of metal and bone, echoed in the silence of the chamber. The beast was merciless, its strength overwhelming, but Neil refused to back down. Lena watched, heart pounding, as Neil relied on instinct and ingenuity. He wasn't stronger, nor faster, nor more durable than the Abyssal Devourer. But he had something they hadn't expected, an indomitable will that wouldn't be broken. Neil clung to a shard of metal, the last weapon he had fashioned. His body screamed for relief, but he pressed on, fueled by nothing but determination. The creature slashed at him again, and this time Neil managed to dodge, striking out at its underbelly with the makeshift blade. To everyone's astonishment, the Abyssal Devourer let out a pained roar, thrashing in agony. Its strength began to wane, its massive frame faltering. In that moment of victory, Neil realized something that had escaped him before. He wasn't fighting against the creature, he was fighting against fear itself. When the creature finally collapsed, defeated, the chamber fell silent. Delegates from across the galaxy looked on, their confidence shaken. Thrakis, Tkor, and others couldn't ignore the undeniable truth: humanity had faced not only the beast but the very essence of fear, and they had conquered it. Lena stepped forward, her voice steady and triumphant. "We may not be the strongest, the fastest, or the most technologically advanced, but we are the species that refuses to yield to fear. And that makes us something far more dangerous." The Zulon warrior, who had initially scoffed at humanity, bowed his head in grudging respect. Core, once certain of human inferiority, observed Neil with new eyes. "Your biology is still incomplete," he said, his voice low. "But your will, that is something we will have to consider." Thrakis watched in silence, his tendrils twitching. The Zarnathian overseer had always prided himself on his species' resilience. But now, he wasn't so sure. In the aftermath of Neil's victory, the galaxy began to whisper of humanity not as a species of curiosity, but as one of unrelenting potential. And as they stood there, watching Neil's battered form rise from the dust, the truth settled in. Human biology was flawed, perhaps even imperfect. But their will? Their unyielding determination? That was something no apex predator could claim. Neil stood at the edge of the crater where the abyssal devourer had once towered. The ground beneath him was cracked and scorched, but his pulse still thrummed with the force of victory. The confrontation with the monstrous beast had been more than a battle of strength, it had been a test of will, one humanity had passed against all odds. Around him, the other delegates from the galaxy, Zulon, Zarnathians, and others, stood in silence, their previous confidence shattered. Thrakis, once smug and assured of his species' superiority, watched with narrowed eyes, his tentacles twitching in frustration. The Zulon warriors, who had once sought to dominate, now bowed their heads in respect. Lena stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "This isn't just about defeating monsters. It's about understanding who we are. And what we're capable of." Neil nodded, though his body ached. The scars from the battle ran deep, both physically and mentally. He had faced horrors beyond imagination, creatures that had shaped the nightmares of civilizations across the galaxy. But what had truly been tested wasn't just his body, it was his spirit. The Zulon delegate, once dismissive, approached Neil, his deep voice rumbling. "You have proven something we did not expect. Humans have survived what we believed to be impossible." Neil clenched his fists. "Survival isn't enough," he said. "We aren't here just to exist. We fight to stand, to grow, and to thrive." The Zulon warrior tilted his head in acknowledgement. "Perhaps," he mused, "but your biology." He hesitated before continuing. "It is still incomplete, flawed in ways we thought insurmountable. Yet it seems you possess something far more dangerous: resilience." Lena stepped forward again, her voice filled with conviction. "We don't have the perfect biology. We don't have the greatest technology. But what we do have is the refusal to be ruled by our limitations." Thrakis, the Zarnathian overseer, finally spoke, his voice low and calculating. "Your species may lack the perfect traits of others, but what you have demonstrated, it's not something we can ignore. You endure. You adapt. And now, we must consider that." Neil took a deep breath, the weight of their words settling into his bones. He knew the galaxy wouldn't change overnight. There were still those who viewed humanity as a curiosity, an experiment, or even a threat. But what had happened here, what had transpired in this unforgiving wasteland, would leave an indelible mark. As the sun set over the scarred horizon, casting long shadows, Neil felt a quiet victory within him. This was not the end of the journey. It was merely the beginning. The galaxy would continue to challenge humanity, but they had proven one thing beyond doubt: they would not be broken. Lena placed a hand on Neil's shoulder, her expression one of quiet strength. "They'll remember us now. Maybe not as the strongest, but as the ones who never give up." Neil gave a faint smile. "That's enough." The delegates began to file away, their presence fading into the distance. Yet as they left, there was a lingering question among them: was humanity truly the flawed, fragile species they had once thought? Or had they, in their imperfections, become something far more formidable than any apex predator could ever comprehend? Neil watched them go, his heart steady, his will unshaken. For humanity, the battle wasn't over, it had only begun. But as long as they carried the fire of resilience, they would continue to endure. And perhaps, just perhaps, they would rise.